Hello everyone, today we're going to look at property tax. So property tax is a tax that's paid on lands and buildings on the land, and sometimes it can also apply to personal property that you leave on the land, such as vehicles or boats. These taxes are used to pay for city services, so the police force, fire department, schools, all that sort of stuff. The property tax is a percentage of what's called the assessed value of the property, which is just a percentage of the market value of the property. Property taxes vary by city and by state, and they're usually under 3%. So if you're doing a problem and you're getting a property tax of like 12%, you might want to go back and look at your math, because if it's too high, no one would be able to afford them. So I said it's usually 1 point something or 2 point something percent. So it's a very small percentage. And we'll be using what we call the basic percent equation, which says that a percentage of something is equal to something else. And in this case, a percentage of the assessed value is equal to the property tax, which gives us the equation R times A equals T. So R being the property tax rate, A being the assessed value, and T being the property taxes. The tax rate can be given one of 5 ways. So in the equation, it'll be given as a decimal, so something like 0.01234556. It can also be given as a percentage. So remember, percent means per 100. So 0.0123 would be 1.23%. So you're moving the decimal 2 places to the right from the decimal into the percentage. It could also be listed as something called per C. So per C is the same as percent, as in it's per 100. But instead of a percent symbol, it's a dollar amount. So instead of 1.23%, it's $1.23 per C. So it's still moving the decimal from the original decimal number 2 places, because again, there's 2 zeros and 100. We also have per M. So M is the Roman numeral for 1,000. So per M means per 1,000, and that means we're going to move the decimal 3 places, and we're going to get 12.34, and again, it's a dollar amount. So you want to make sure that you're rounding to the nearest hundredth after you've moved it, and now as I'm seeing it, that was rounded incorrectly, so that should be a 5. Right, because after the 4 is a 5, so that should round up. So that should definitely be 12.35. And then the last one that we can do is something called mils. So mils is coming from the same root word that the M is coming for, meaning per 1,000. So it's the number from per M, but rounded up to the next integer. So it's not rounded, it's rounded up. So even if the per M was something like 12.04, it would still round up to 13. So this mils is always a whole number, and it's the ceiling function, if you know what a ceiling function is. So it's the next highest integer from the per M number. So we're going to do some problems based off of the basic percent formula and the different ways that we can write the rates. So for our first example, it says the property tax rate is 2.5%. Find the tax on property assessed at $110,000. So we have our percent equation, R times A equals T. So R is 2.5%. We need to put it back as a decimal. So we're going to move that decimal 2 places to the left. And that's going to give us 0.025 times the assessed value, $110,000. And we get $2,750. And these rates would be for a year's worth of property taxes. So it would be $2,750 for a year. If the tax rate is 1.75% and the property tax was $3,500, find the assessed value of the property. So it's the same equation, but now we're looking for a different piece of information. So the 1.75% will change to 0.0175 once we've moved the decimal back. So 0.0175 times A equals 3,500. we will divide both sides by 0.0175, and we'll get an assessed value of $200,000. And then the next one is if your taxes were $27.40 and your assessed value was $195,000, find the tax rate as a percentage and in mils. So this will have we'll be solving for the third of the unknown possibilities in our equation. So we'll make sure we put these into the correct spot. So $27.40 is the T, the property tax. $195,000 is the A, the assessed value. And now we're looking for R. So we'll divide both sides by 195,000, and we'll get the decimal. And you want to make sure that you put a whole bunch of decimals here, because at some point you're going to move the decimal and then also round. So you don't want to only have like 2 or 3 decimal places before you move it, because then you still need to round it. So we got all these decimals, and then we want it as a percentage and in mils, so we'll do the percent first. So we're going to move the decimal twice, and we're going to get 1.41%. So usually we go to the nearest hundredth after we've changed it to a percentage. Okay. So it's a percent, it's 1.41. And then in mils, we're going to move the decimal 3 places, and if we move it 3 places, that gives us 14.05, and then again, mils is the next highest integer. So in mils, we get 15 mils. Okay. And so now we'll do another example of finding each of the 3 unknowns. So find the assessed value of your property if you paid $980 in taxes at a rate of $23 per M. So we need to change 23 per M into a decimal. So per M means per 1,000, so we're going to move that decimal 3 places to the left. And that gives us 0.023A equals 980. Divide both sides by 0.023. And we get an assessed value of, to the nearest hundredth, because it's dollars, $42,608.70. You paid $34.50 in taxes on your property assessed at $140,000. Find the tax rate in per C. So we're going to plug those numbers into our equation. We get 140,000 R equals $34.50. Divide both sides by 140,000. And we get as a decimal 0.02464. And then we need to change it to per C. So again, we're going to move the decimal over twice, and then that's a dollar amount, so we're going to need 2 decimals after we've moved it over twice. So that's going to give us $2.46 per C. And then as the last one, if the property tax rate is 1.85%, find the taxes on a property assessed at $250,000. So we're going to put it into our equation, 1.85% as a decimal. If we've moved the decimal over twice, gives us 0.0185. So we have 250,000 times 0.0185 will equal our tax, and that is $4,625. So let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.